Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Stories About This Place. Glad to have you here tonight. I'm Ryan Owens. I'm the Executive Director of the Monadnock Conservancy. We're so sorry that we're doing this virtually again. We had hoped not to be, but back months ago when we scheduled this, Omicron was raging, and so we played it safe, and we're virtual again, but hopefully for not too much longer. The American author Richard Louv wrote, "We cannot protect something we do not love." And in my opinion, we come to love something through our experiences with it, our experiences with the place, and we share those experiences with others through stories. And that's exactly the objective of Stories About This Place, to hear from others' experiences and love for our place and to share it with the rest of us. And you're going to hear 4 incredible speakers tonight do just that. I am going to start off, before I introduce our first speaker, with some orientation to Zoom and how best to experience this. I'll also say that the music that you heard in the opening is from a composer and musician named Ben Cosgrove. And that is from his album Yankee Division, and that song is called Good Fences. Ben was actually an intern here at the Monadnock Conservancy long ago. So on your screen, you should see something like this, although not with the big placeholder of our event name in it. But I want to give you a little bit of an orientation to the controls under Zoom, in case you find that you need that at all. First of all, everybody here, sorry, you're automatically muted and your video is turned off. This is necessary to avoid distraction and also prevent sound feedback during the presentation. You've probably all heard it before, but you can, in that lower left-hand corner of the screen, go to the audio settings and control how you hear the sound that is coming to you. The other thing to know is that this presentation is best experienced in full screen mode. So up in the upper right, you can click on the view button and choose to be in full screen mode. And on our end, we'll be doing our best to spotlight the speakers so that they fill your screen as much as possible when they're speaking. Also to know is that there are some chat opportunities during tonight's presentation. We are disabling the chat that enables people to post messages to everyone here while the speakers are speaking. That's just to ensure everybody can really immerse yourselves in stories. But during the stories, if you find that you need to get a message to me or to one of the hosts, the people kind of behind the scenes running this, you can chat to us, but we'll disable the ability to chat with everyone else during those stories. But then we'll reopen it again during our brief intermission. And if people do want to share comments with everyone else, you'll be welcome to do so. So I am now going to introduce our first speaker. Doug Sutherland is a summer camp professional based in the Monadnock region. He's been the camp director of Adventure Camp at Sargent Center in Hancock, camp director at Camp Starfish in Rindge, camp director at the Barbara C. Harris Camp in Greenfield, and the executive director of Brentwood Camp in Greenfield. He enjoys fall weather, woodworking, the outdoors, and working with children and adults in the outdoors. He is a diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging facilitator and is a part of the Hancock Community Conversation on Race group. Sutherland is a graduate of Lake Forest College in Lake Forest, Illinois. Originally from St. Louis, he moved to the area in 1999. And I'll add that we're thrilled that Doug recently joined the board of the Monadnock Conservancy. So now I'm happy to hand it off to our first speaker, Doug Sutherland.
Okay. Yep. Hello, everyone. I'm speaking to you from the beautiful Manchester, New Hampshire. I am attending a American Camp Association conference at the moment, and this is our first in-person conference in a couple of years. So, that's why I have the beads on. We're having our banquet tonight. Didn't take them off. Apologize, but hey, it just makes me look even better. I wanted to. I'm happy to be here. I wanted and share I guess my story of being here in the Monadnock region. Um, like like Ryan said, I've been here since 1999. It was not my plan to be here for this long. My plan was to be here for about a year, and yeah, that obviously did not happen. I've been here ever since, but I will say that after my first summer, and I came here to work at a summer camp, and that was Adventure Camp at Sargent Center, or Sargent Camp at the time, which then became Sargent Center. It just went through some names. It was just going to work there this summer, then work at another organization for the rest of that year. But they talked me into staying at Sargent Center, or Sargent Camp, whatever, into the fall. And I was like, okay, after this year, I'm out, I'm done. And I will say that my first fall here was absolutely amazing. The Adventure Camp is right, or Sargent Center is right on Half Moon Pond. And I guess that's parts in Hancock. It's right on Peterborough, Hancock town line. And I looked out over the water, and it was just awestruck about the beauty of fall here. That was my first fall in New England, in New Hampshire. And then the first winter came. I was a little bit worried about that, but it turned out to be a winter very similar to winters in St. Louis, where it snowed, yeah, but it also, there was ice, and then it melted, and there was more snow. It wasn't that big of a deal. I'm like, oh, okay, I can handle this. Now, I will say though, when I first came out here, what I was expecting is weather-wise, was because it's so close to the coast, it would be nice, cool breezes, no humidity. It would be just excellent. That is not what happened. It was hot. It was humidity. It was like, this is not right. This is not what I expected. But that's okay. Fall came. And then winter came, wasn't a big deal. Decided to stay on at Adventure Camp for another summer. Like I can put off, because my plan originally was to go out west after a year out east. I'm like, I could put that off for another year. I had a good time, so I'll stay. And then I had a great next summer. Had a great next fall. Stayed at Sargent Center for another year in their school program. And then that's where things got interesting. The second winter, well, let's just say I didn't think it was possible for it to snow for 3 days straight. Like the way I understood weather patterns is that storms move through, not necessarily stay in the same spot. I'm like, that made no sense to me. How can it snow for 3 days straight? That's not possible. I was very confused by that. Anyway, it did, and it snowed, and there was just a lot of snow. And my family anyway was like, why are you out there? And I should go back and say the reason I came out here was to work with kids in the outdoors. It was to be outside. I used to work in St. Louis. I worked at the Missouri Botanical Garden, and I had this vast knowledge. Since then has gone away, but it's back there, I'm sure, somewhere. This vast knowledge of the outdoors, trees, plants. I was like, stars. I was all over. I had all this information that I wanted to share with folks. And I also wanted to show folks that a person of color, a Black person like myself, can be in the outdoors. And what better place than in New Hampshire? It was a great place for that to happen. So, and share my knowledge with folks. Ever since then, after that second year, I started doing more administrative stuff. So I moved away from the actual working directly with the campers, and then moved into training campers. I'm sorry, training staff members to work with campers. So showing them my love for the outdoors, my love for the activities, just the beauty that is out there, training staff in that, and then them going out and doing that with campers. So I did that for the next, well, I still do that to a certain degree. Now I'm definitely more administrative, but I've never lost my love for what's around me. And apparently, New Hampshire and New England and the whole thing, but in New Hampshire, it has held my attention. I will say, in total disclosure, that I did go to Rhode Island for about, let's say, about 6 months, maybe a little bit less. And nothing against Rhode Island, but it just wasn't. It wasn't for me. And I wound up coming back to New Hampshire and back to the Monadnock region, and it's always, always, always captured my heart. I did spend some time up in Maine, working at a summer camp there, but apparently New Hampshire has me now, and um, it's not just the land, but it's also the people. And overall, it's been great. Has there been some tough times? Absolutely. To be honest with you, I am a Black man in New Hampshire. Let's just be honest with that. So some things have been hard, but overall, I'm still here, and I met my wife here. We have a daughter here, and this is where we've made our home. And I want this to be the home that I can be proud of. And I do a lot of work along those lines to make sure that it's the home that my daughter can be comfortable, that I'm comfortable, that my family is comfortable. Will it always be comfortable? I don't know. I don't know. But I can work to make that happen. And just being able to be outside, excuse me, in this part of the world, our little part of the world, and see the amazingness that is out there. That's what I love, and I want to continue to share that with folks. I want to continue to bring people to this area. Not this, I don't care if they stay, but I want them to see it. I don't. My goal is not to, increase the population here in Monadnock region. That's not a goal of mine, but I want them to see it. I want them to experience it, and I want them to be comfortable here. Whoever those people are, I've never concerned myself with the idea that it has to be this type of people that I want to be comfortable here. I want everyone to be comfortable in the outdoors. Can they be? I have no idea. Some of it is up to them. Some of it's up to the people that are out there. But at least to have the opportunity. When I was working at Brentwood Camp, we were bringing up campers from the New York, New Jersey, Boston area. These campers were not in the outdoors. In fact, they spent at least 2020 not out of their homes, not out of their apartments, not out of where they were living. And then we bring them up to camp and say, here it is. And for me to realize and to understand that these kids don't spend their time in the woods. It's dark. Now, granted, it could be dark where they are, but it's a different type of dark. And it can also be somewhat loud where they are, but it's a different type of loud where we may say, oh, it's nice and quiet. For them, it's different sounds. And I had to understand that. But again, the goal was to help them feel comfortable here, even for the short amount of time. In a whole year, it's only about 14, 16 days in there, to help them feel comfortable. And it wasn't just at Brentwood. It was at Camp Starfish. It was at the Barbara C. Harris Camping Conference Center. It was at Adventure Camp. But overall, for me, I want them to see that you don't have to be white to enjoy the outdoors. Now, they may never come back to the outdoors. That's beside the point. For me, it was beside the point. But at least they had the experience, and they also saw someone that looks different from them or that looks like them in the outdoors. And I felt that that was extremely important for me, and I'll take full ownership of it. I wanted to feel good about it, but just maybe they will see some value in it for them. And if they saw that value, maybe, just maybe, they'll return and they'll want to have that experience also. And then Again, maybe share that with someone else. And if it's not going to be a kid of color, if it turns out to be a white kid, I'm okay with that because I want people to enjoy being out in the natural world. I never want to live in the city. Never want nothing against the city. It's just not for me. So if I want this to be an accepting place for people like myself, for anyone, I want to make sure that happens. So I want people to feel as comfortable as possible. Is it scary? Absolutely. I remember, let's see, I don't know how to say, about 2 years ago, I was looking out the kitchen window of my house, and a bear walks through my yard. And it was like 5:30 in the morning. Hadn't had coffee yet. A little bit weird. And my brain was not communicating with anything else. I'm like, saw the bear. I'm like, there's a bear. And then once the synapses started snapping, it's like, oh, that's a bear. Right. Bear did it, was doing his thing or her thing. Not sure which one it was. But yeah, if I were to tell my campers and some of my staff members about that, it would be strange. It was definitely strange. Don't get me wrong. I know bears are out there, but I don't necessarily need them around my house. But it was just one of those moments that's like, yep, bears are here. Yep, seeing moose here and there. Saw bobcat a couple of years ago. I was like, and this is where I live. Is it freaky? Yes. Is it somewhat scary? Definitely. But there's so many other things that are also scary uh, that I have learned to deal with, or I am dealing with, or that I'm looking to change, that have nothing to do with wildlife. It has nothing to do with looking out Norway Pond in the fall. That's just amazing. New Hampshire is beautiful. St. Louis, in its own way, is beautiful. I kind of do miss the flatness sometimes, but overall, it's just a beautiful place here. And it's where I decided I wanted to raise my family, which is weird, especially coming from a Black man. And believe me, when I tell folks I'm from New Hampshire, they look at me like, what are you doing in New Hampshire? Like, this is where I want to raise my family. My daughter's having a wonderful time at school. We have what we need here. I have the people around me that I feel comfortable with, but I also have people around me that are willing to work on things. And there are probably some that are not willing to work on it yet, but that's just about anywhere. But I know that I'm willing to do the work to make sure that, we are a part of the community. And being a part of the Monadnock Conservancy is one way to do that. Being a part of the River Center is one way to do that. And being a member of the community is another way to do that. So that's my story. That's my, land story, just being a part of it. It's interesting being a part of Monadnock Conservancy because I'm learning a lot about land trusts and everything. This stuff I didn't know before, and I'm glad that it's happening because I will always get that fall view with people, with organizations like the Monadnock Conservancy, which I think is needed, especially in our area. So that's my story. Thank you very much.
Doug, thank you so much. We're glad you're here, Doug, and we're glad that, in your words, New Hampshire has you. And thanks for taking the time out during the conference to speak. Enjoy the rest of it. Our second speaker is Jodi Farwell. Jodi farms full-time with her husband and 2 sons in Harrisville on the land where she was raised. Every morning and every evening, she milks the cows. That's a lot of time for thought. She often thinks about the acreage the milk is distilled from, her land and the fields of 11 other local landowners who wish their fields to be mown for use each year. Each customer who buys a bottle of milk is thereby provided a drink of the landscape they call home. Jodi will be reading you a story this evening. And if you like this one, you might also like to look up another story she wrote of the land where she first started farming. That story is under production as a short documentary film by High Cairns Films, and we'll be posting a link in the chat to where you can find that film. So now I'm really happy to introduce Jodi Farwell as our next speaker.
Hello. So I'm going to read you a story I wrote some years ago about how my husband and I came to be landed farmers. It's really the beginning of the story of how one piece of land in Harrisville kept our family together. We began our years together with a tenuous caretaking agreement on a beautiful abandoned farm. In our years on that place, we accumulated livestock and tractors and hay equipment and customers, and we were farming. When we could no longer stay at that place we were caretaking, we lighted on my father's land nearby, where our cattle were already living. We put our farm on his farm, and the two fit well enough. And this is where tonight's story picks up. We, my father, my husband, and myself, were then all of the firm belief that it was this father's land that allowed us each to be who we thought we were. We were also sure we needed that land, that smallish yet precious piece of land, that we had to learn how to live with each other. I wrote this at a time when we were passing each other every day without speaking, at a time when trying to fit 2 farms and 3 flawed humans together seemed hopeless. I wrote this and I handed it to my father. I said, "This is harsh, but I think it gets at the heart of the matter here." And before I read it, I'll tell you also, my husband asked me this afternoon what I was sharing. And he said, "Oh no, not that one that sounds as if we were demanding to be given land." And I'll tell you, we weren't that harsh. What we were demanding was a solid answer, that we could stay where we were, that we at least had fewer maybes about where we could stay. So here it is. It's called The Promised Land, for my father, who makes it all possible and impossible, and who would say precisely the same of us. It is our great privilege to wake in the surrounds of the promised land each morning, to walk forth over it in all seasons, to feed ourselves and our neighbors from its soil, to raise our children in its beauty. Here is mountain to look to over sweep of fields, pasture to graze, woodland to ramble. Here are relics and rocks of a long past that is not ours. Here are buildings and clearings of a childhood past that is mine. Here is a grandfather and a man and a wife and a boy who speaks and a boy who will soon speak. And here is a future, if the promise is good. We are amassing a farm, that most heavy of ethereal things on this land of the grandfather. We are the farm. The people and the buildings and the clearings and the animals are the farm. The farm needs this land. The land does not need the farm, but the farm needs the land. The land will go on. It will go on bringing forth grass and then trees if there is no one to tend the grass. And it will, left to its ways, heal over the wounds of buildings and concrete and stonework. Despite the concrete poured down and the lumber raised up and the tons of animal born, this farm rests lightly, precariously. Something is wrong on this farm, the son who speaks mused through last spring. I don't know what it is, but something is wrong on this farm. This land has known many people, many farms. It has known owner farmers and hired farmers and been rented to down the road farmers. The works of the past are evident in the acres held whole through the years, in the clearings, in the veining of stone walls. The failures, the fires, the abandonments are known in what is absent. My childhood began on tumbled foundations of a small house and a large barn, and 2 fields for hay. All this only since the first settlers' axe here. This land is promised to us. It is willed to us by a man whose strength of will may determine our time here. He wonders why this is not enough. He wonders where our trust is. Our trust is in the past. It is in the husband's family farms close by, whose pastures are under reservoir, whose gravestones are sunken in forest, whose yards where family sat for a portrait in best chairs dragged from a parlor are grown to trees, which are now going down to houses. Our trust is in these same nearby lands that harbored 5 generations of family, raising scores of children and taking some back, before they all went to fund the hard last years of one man. And yet, we have given this promised land our children, our buildings, our earnings, our labor, our livestock, our marriage. We are not trusting of much, but we are hopeful, and we have been faithful to that hope. We trust that you will grow older, we say to the grandfather. You will die. We trust that. You may die slowly and at great cost. These are the things we speak of. We had a meeting this morning, Grandpa, says the boy. Oh, yeah? About buying your land when you die. I want you to have this land, the grandfather has so many times said. That has always been my greatest wish, but I can't know what will happen. I might need the land if something happens. I don't want to feel that I am not welcome here, and there is this anger. Yes, you might need the land. You might even need it to be alive and thriving with this farm on it. And it will go on needing you. Even after you are done with your work, this land will welcome you to mend the gaps left by 2 people working at full capacity. These small boys need you, and these boys might need the land. These grandsons born to farming people, working people, angry people, good people. We trust that you may well do as you say. You may find need to sell this land, or a soft, unknowing hand may file papers that claim first rights to its value while you lie comfortably unaware. You nearly died last year. One day you were working, and then you were gone, hostage to care. Let us remind you of that. Let us think about this, with every thought that we must finish buildings, maintain buildings, clear land, tidy up. With another trouble, you could be sent to a home to recover, and that day, that very day, they begin helping you. They have the given right to lay claim to this land that we have had to dutifully, cruelly, angrily, and ever so slowly earn our way onto. Will we then that day begin buying back from them the promise and all that we have built on the promise? Do we think it right to speak of all this? It would be right if we did not need to. Do we trust our hearts not to break? No. They are already half broken. And so is yours. We know. We are after your land, yes. We are hard after your land. We would take the burden of it from you now. Let this land feed the work of living, and let us all keep living on it. Do not let its value feed the coffers of sickness and death. Let its value stay in its promise. These are the things we speak of. We have spoken with compassion and with venom. We have spoken for years, many, many years. In January, it's always in January, we say enough. Enough of this talk. We will go away. We will leave you in peace. We will sell the animals, the machinery, the accumulated tons of odds and ends, and we will be free. We have spoken for years. We will now stop. We're done, the boy is told. We're leaving to live on the other side of the stone wall. We own that side. We will not be a farm there, but we can live there. He cries. Then he says, all right, but I'm bringing my axe with me. And it is then, only then, that the mirage we have all seen as our future becomes clear, absolutely clear. There will be frost year in and year out on two sides of this wall that once ran innocently through the center of a piece of land, but that will now divide two separate countries. The barns, no longer needed, will become ramshackle in spite of any intentions. The concrete will crack and weeds will begin the slow takeover of a monument to failure. The pastures will be mown down once a year until the end is so near that the mowing seems futile, and then the trees will come back. This we can trust. And the boy will say when he is older, what people could let a place go like this? There he was at age 5 with that axe, settling the land stump by small stump. It is actually a hatchet, and that is what my mom and dad call it, but I call it my axe, he would say. He walked any willing visitors among the collection of stumps to his name. Here could be seen the reckoning of his value as a settler, the degree to which he was established on this piece of land. Farmers keep the trees back. You keep the trees to one side of the wall and the field to the other. You burn them and build with them, and live among them. And this keeping back of the trees makes the land yours for a time. It is our time now, if we take it, because the vigor of our anger, our leaving, made a kind of grace that our years of frantic patience could not. 3 generations will go to a lawyer's office a week from today. The boy who spoke of something wrong on this farm may now see it put right, and we may see his words proved true once again. Your land is where you live, he announced to his grandfather not long ago. All this land is my land because it is where I cut my first tree. When a man cuts a tree, he makes it his land. From the time I cut that tree, it has been mine. Yes, and you are its promise. Now, I wrote this story about 6 years ago. Over those years, our boys grew, and all of us got better and better together, to the point that we saw our good intentions proving true. We were all still there. Our boys were growing up knowing that they could stay, that every bit of work they did was for their land. And their grandfather was smiling because he saw these boys living the life he loved on his land. And then last November, this father and grandfather did die. His heart stopped, and his life ended right there in the tracks of his day. And I found this story. I just read to you, and it was saved among his papers. And with it was a note saying some thoughts. Even though this is written through your eyes, I could feel the hope, the pain, and the hope again. It should stand as written and serve as the journey of one learning to let go and another's pathway to the future. So that's our story with a happy ending. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Jodi. That was beautiful. I know you can't see the faces of the audience as you're speaking, but I know that there were smiles and some knowing nods and probably some tears and some deep thoughts. So thank you. Well, we've come to our intermission, which will be brief. We'll have about 3 minutes. And during this time, the chat will be on, and we invite people to share any suggestions of future storytellers that we might want to invite to speak on stories about this place. So we will see you back in about 3 minutes. Thanks. Thanks everyone for the great suggestions. Oh, these are good. These are fun to read. Thank you all. Well, we're back. Hopefully you had a chance to refill a drink or get a snack. We have 2 more speakers left. And I'm happy to introduce the next one. The next speaker is Rodger Martin. Rodger Martin's book of poetry, For All the Tea in Changhua, follows the Battlefield Guide and the selection of the Blue Moon series by Small Press Review as one of its bi-monthly picks of the year. His poems about the Monadnock Conservancy's John and Rosemary Calhoun family forest property appear in Writing the Land Northeast anthology. He's received an Appalachia Award for Poetry, a New Hampshire State Council on the Arts Award for Fiction, and fellowships from the National Endowment for the Humanities, excuse me. His work has appeared in journals and anthologies throughout the United States and China. He also works with budding journalists at Keene State College. You can find him online at www.rodgerwriter.com, and that's Rodger with a D. Rodger, happy to introduce you and hear your story.
Thank you, Ryan, and thank you, Jodi, for that moving piece, and Doug for the stories of Sergeant Camp. I first came to New England in 1968 in the late winter. Uh, I was a soldier and had just returned from Vietnam, and I was stationed at Fort Devens. It was late February. I drove up at night and got as far as Sturbridge, Massachusetts, and I just could not go any further. So I pulled into a rest area and went to sleep. At dawn, I awoke, and spread out before me was the entire central Massachusetts Valley, and at the tip of it in the north was a mountain with a tree line that came to a peak and was snow-capped. I did not know such places existed on the East Coast. It was at that moment that I thought, this is where I will live. After I got out of the Army, I finished my education. I put a compass on the peak of Mount Monadnock and drew a 30-mile radius and said, I will live and work anywhere within the 30 miles of that peak. And it's been 54 years, and I'm still here. This first poem, probably the one I'm best known for, it was written about an incident that occurred with a moose. I drove home late one night, and there was a moose in the driveway along Sergeant Camp Road in Harrisville. The next morning, I read in the Sentinel that a moose had been hit by a car on Route 12. This is that story. Along the Monadnock Watch, moonglow casts deep to the dark spine and flank of this ancient whale of rock. And here, beached by the edge of a marsh stream, like a salt, like an almost Roman outpost, stands a well guarding hemlock and brush while mist unveils its tapestry. Soon, a giant form thrashes clear of water. A moose, rack erect, plods toward the well and pauses. Steam rises from his back. He slowly wheels, wattle winging like a bell, and sniffs toward the granite peak that once sheltered wolf, until these nearsighted, almost Latin tillers ringed the stone with flame and burned the green to ash. The moose listens as those night legends sing, then ignores the granite blocks and returns to his slosh toward great lodges of pine. Later, as the moon guards its lower track, the moose is nailed on Highway 12, forelimbs shattered by the chrome of another dreamer. An officer kneels by his side, strokes the dark fur. The moose breathes deep, each slow release a soft cloud masked in the flash of red and blue, the low crackle of voice, the square box of rescue truck. But over there on the mountain, framed under stars, a gray wolf floats up the shoe-worn rock and turns to stare down at the tiny strobes gathered along the pencil line it cannot cross. It sifts its head, then crouches low and points its snout to heaven. The howl descends to the ears of the valley. The moose awakens. His clean, dark eyes meet the officers. Natives awaken and listen to owl echo wolf, echo loon. The bull imagines his antlers rising from a cold lake, while lilies cascade from his rack, and he bellows. The officer points his pistol and brings the hammer down. There's a backstory to this poem. I knew the police officer from reading the name, and 30 years later, I read that Lieutenant Darrell Madden was retiring from the KPD. And so I thought I'd like to give him that poem. So I took it over to the police department and gave him a copy of the poem, and he remembered well the incident. And he told me that for weeks after having to put that moose down, his wife could not go to the grocery store or into coffee shops in Keene without some resident coming up to her and being very upset because her husband had killed that moose. And I thought it was such an odd misunderstanding of what had to be done at the moment. The next poem I will read is actually created for the Monadnock Conservancy, the Calhoun Family Forest. When I write from place. I need my feet on the ground. I need to smell and hear and taste and touch these places. And out of all of that, when I'm ready, something will appear that I can hang the poem on. This is the third of those poems, and it's about some of the stories that I heard as I learned about this forest. It's called Calhoun Family Forest, The Legends. A fecund lunar vapor stirs the nostrils as the trail winds its way to Skull Rock, keeper of stones, guardian of granite outcroppings. He marks each traveler approaching iridescent broom fork. Is this one worthy? And for each who passes, the story door opens. 1. An azalea sphinx flutters across stone steps to the bridge. It alights on the other side, contemplates the flame of the sun. Is this the innocent heal-all? 2. A swift courses acrobatically through timbers, locked in its search for sustenance. Each sudden twist a possibility, each a future somewhere else. 3. In this dank hollow beneath the ledges, generations of quills wait for the boy hiding from his seekers. Little brother earns his name. 4. A man with his hiking stick returns after wintering with his daughter on the tidal flats of Virginia. Each day finds him walking with the memory of her mother. 5. One warbling vireo gabs gossip with a black-throated green warbler. Cousins in tenacity and woodland chatter carried on from before the Abenakis. 6. A road to Sullivan in the age when travelers did not concern themselves with comfort. A track children skied from hilltop to base, not concerned with anyone or thing coming the other way. Seven. Such a road could lead to Switzerland's solstice moon, setting an alpine meadow aglow, where the blue shadow of an angel suggests the perfect spruce for Christmas. 8. Parked aside a logging trail in the older growth, a green Jeep waits on a forester and small boy learning to mark trees. Instead, the boy learns an independent compass and true north. 9. Above the falls, behind the ledge, 5 islands among the wood-stubbled rivulets become stardust for 5 children. Each island a tiny spiral galaxy, each galaxy a stepping stone to an expanding universe. Thank you for the opportunity to share some of this work.
Thank you, Rodger, for sharing. I can't wait to go back out to the Calhoun Forest now and see it with new eyes after hearing that poem. Our fourth and final speaker is Steven Roberge. Steven Roberge is a licensed forester and sugar maker. He has worked for the University of New Hampshire Cooperative Extension for 16 years. From 2006 to 2020, Roberge was the Cheshire County Extension Forester. He currently is the Extension Specialist in Forest Resources for New Hampshire, overseeing the County Extension Forester Program and serving as the state's maple specialist. This guy gets to sample a lot of maple syrup. Roberge earned a bachelor's degree in forest science from the University of New Hampshire and a master's degree from Yale University. At home, he tends to 750 maple trees, like right now, in the past few weeks, that he and his family tap every spring. And I'll say on a personal note that I have, since I've known Steve forever, aspired to have a beard as great as his. Maybe someday I will. Steve, it's all yours.
Thank you, Ryan. All it takes, Ryan, is just not caring to shave and an accepting spouse. So let me grab this. Okay, good, thank you. So to talk about this place, I figured I'd just share in a little inside family joke of places my son won't leave. We have a 4-year-old who loves to be outside, and once he gets engaged with something outside, it's hard to draw him away. And today, it was McDowell Dam, not so much for the dam itself, but for the buffleheads that were swimming around and having a good time on the water. He's become an avid birder since 2020 in the COVID lockdown, and we look to promote that. But to get to these other places my son won't leave and kind of the hope for him in this place, I'd like to, make sure I get this here. Sorry, I'm trying to advance the slides remotely. There we go. Get to my history here. I grew up in the city of Berlin, New Hampshire. This is actually probably taken 60 years before I was born. But if you're not familiar with Berlin, right on the Androscoggin River, just north of the White Mountains, it's Mount Jefferson and Adams, or I'm sorry, Madison and Adams in the background there. A picture of my neighborhood, and really what I saw out my bedroom window every day. I slept in the city, but I played, I recreated, I camped out in the woods, the surrounding woods behind it. So my childhood was filled with really being outside, climbing trees, hanging out in the woods behind our high school, and just getting into all sorts of trouble. I guess, a typical, kind of city living, I say it jokingly, but chasing domesticated turkeys as a young buck there. But spending time outside pretty much anytime I could. Spending summers on an island up on a Bagog, north of Errol. And this is really due to either my parents being very tired after having their third kid and working full time, or for their avid love of the outdoors as well. I suspect that it was probably a combination of both, but from both my parents, I got the appreciation for the surrounding landscape, the fact that we lived in the city and had the ability to leave Berlin and very quickly be into the White Mountains, be into the woods, and just have fun and experience it. And that's exactly what we did. And so I remember spending summers training for these epic hikes up at Baxter State Park with my parents and friends, my friends' parents as well, and getting to the top of Katahdin, seeing it in the middle on the top there. But really just having a blast. And my father had perhaps a household rule, perhaps, where we had to go camping once a month, regardless of the weather. And that led us to experience kind of different sheltering, not just tents, but here being creative, using not just one, but 2 refrigerator boxes in snow to create a shelter to sleep in, and actually going ice fishing, the lake being behind my father taking the picture there. So we love to be outside. I love to be outside. And so much so I actually took jobs that allowed me to be outside and to recreate. Working at Wildcat Mountain, after the first month or so of working there, I realized that all I was doing was working and not recreating. So I found myself conveniently storing my skis on top of my car while I was in high school. And every once in a while, pretending to go to high school, but actually to go skiing, either going skiing at Wildcat, where I actually had seasons pass because I was an employee, or on one fateful day, climbing Tuckermans, as pictured here, to go skiing. If you've ever skied and climbed Tuckermans in April, it's an absolute party up there. It's a zoo. It's a great place to be, and the skiing conditions are fabulous. But after climbing the initial hill to get to the base of the bowl, I found my father doing the same exact thing, skipping work to enjoy a good hike. I guess it was just too much to pass up, so we met each other there only by mistake. I don't think we ever told my mother that was the case, or at least I didn't tell my mother. But very, very, very fun. We have this joke in my family, and this is the picture that kind of gives the summary of it, but this is at the Boston Museum of Science. And this was a place myself I did not want to leave. This was very different from growing up in Berlin. It was the Boston Museum of Science. It was fabulous. And this was the first thing that we came to when we entered into that museum. It was just balls floating in water. And for, I don't know, a 3-4-year-old, that was the most amazing thing to ever think of. I would not leave that place. I was stuck there. And much to my father's frustration, he had to sit there with me until I would move. And that was probably an hour or so. Unless, if they tried to pull me away, it was no doubt melting down. My brothers and my mother went off to do their own thing here. Needless to say, I did leave the Boston Museum of Science. And I actually found myself in Keene in 2006, as Ryan said, the Cheshire County Forester. And that was my time to engage with landowners, to engage with the public, and to essentially educate them on the place where they live, educate them about the forest resource that's out there, the critters that bop around in there, and just get them out in the woods to get a better appreciation of what's out there. So, and that was fabulous. It was great interaction to do that. And we actually had the ability to work with partners such as the Monadnock Conservancy, as seen here on Maynard Forest, touring the properties, looking at management, talking about forests, and getting people outside to look at that. And over time, you get pretty famous doing things like that, and you actually get a forum at the Nelson Town Hall talking about ticks. So that was really the height of my career right there, talking about ticks at the Nelson Town Hall. And COVID hit. Shortly after I transitioned into my new role as a state extension forester, and this was really my life for about 2 years now, and being on Zoom doing these things, and being kind of put into a house with my working wife and my 4-year-old, at that time my 2-year-old son, our dog, and so the house became quite crowded and busy, and we had to think of things to do. And so with a 2-year-old, there's no shortage of ideas and amazement, and we quickly expanded our lifestyle to being outside and looking for different things. I didn't know you can find that many sticks and keep a 2-year-old excited and engaged. But naturally, the house still feels pretty small when you're doing those things. So we had to be creative and think of different ways to get outside and to experience essentially the forest, the place around us. So we got creative by finding different ways or different rooms to create outside. Here's one, a good reading nook outside in the van here. But slowly we did do what we should do and get out into the woods and experience what's out there around us. And so we made an effort during the first 6 months of lockdown and no daycare to really get our son outside, to experience birding, to experience the outside world much more than we normally do with normal daycare. And so this is an example of him, quote unquote, setting up a game cam. He's holding it in his hand, waiting for the beaver to come, and certainly he would not leave that spot until he get that picture of the beaver. Still waiting, I think. Finding the perfect rock, exploring like many of us did our local state forest, our local forest around us, local trails. This was excellent, just getting out there. And as you can imagine, this was a spot that both my son and his friend would not leave once they got on top. And so this was a great spot for them to play in. We also found the rhythm of the seasons, which I love about this place, which I loved about living in northern New Hampshire, but also just in New England in general, is that we do have real seasons still. And, you can ice fish and on that same pond go canoeing and later enjoy the foliage, as Doug mentioned. This is actually Half Moon Pond in Hancock. And so this is another one of those examples where another place that my son would not leave, just having so much fun and the space to run around and do his thing. Sticking with the seasons and water, but just a different time. Silver Lake, enjoying the summertime, a place again that he would not leave. But just also recognizing that landscape in front of him is vastly, that watershed has a very high percentage of protection by our local land trust too. Much appreciated. Another spot these days, as mentioned, is the Sugar Maples, a space that he will not leave in the morning after he will run out to make sure the sap is flowing and will not get in the car to go to his current daycare. And I'll leave with this photo here, which I found amazing. After a day of daycare today, this was actually this afternoon, at the Robin's Nest, an all outside daycare, which he really enjoys. And after birding with his mother, looking at those buffleheads over McDowell, he still chose to kind of stay outside and play and do his thing. And he definitely would not leave this stump after finding people casings that are from last spring. And just the amazement of even just that decayed stump that we just not walk by normally, but he found a good hour of play or investigation just in that spot. Now, I suspect my son, like a lot of our children, will leave the place, and just like I did, will leave their place, right? I love growing up in the North Country. I love being in the woods. I love being that close to the mountains. But we all leave, either physically leave or emotionally leave at some point, perhaps. And I suspect my son will too. But I know that he will bring his experiences of this place, of the landscape with him, and the appreciation that that this area and the work that folks can do out here can realize. And so I think even though it saddens me that he may even go someplace else, but I know that he will bring his experience and his knowledge of all the wonders that are out there with him. So with that, this is really my kind of thanks for the work that the Monadnock Conservancy does. And also the other local land trusts too, just to preserve this place and keep it a spot where we can go ice fishing, we can go hiking, we can climb rocks, we can dig up stumps for bugs and good things like that. I enjoy it, and I know that my son enjoys it as well. So thanks for entertaining myself, or thanks for allowing me just to share some photos that I at least found cute. I figured I couldn't go wrong with a 4-year-old playing in the woods with this audience. So thanks for that, and I'll leave it at that. Thanks, Ryan.
Thanks, Steve. Wouldn't it be great if every kid could have a childhood just like your son's and yours? That was wonderful. Well, we're coming to an end. I want to start by thanking all of our speakers, Doug, Jodi, Rodger, and Steve, for sharing your stories with us tonight. I want to thank everybody for attending as well. Hope you enjoyed yourselves. We look forward to your feedback, look forward to going through all the suggestions that you've made as well for future speakers. I wanted to extend an invitation to everyone to get a little closer to the Monadnock Conservancy if you haven't yet. In fact, can show you that on our website, monadnockconservancy.org, you have the opportunity to catch up on all of our latest news. And also, in particular, we'll hope that you'll consider signing up for our e-newsletter. And there you can also have links to connect with us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Also on our website, now that we're coming into hiking season, as the trails dry out a little bit more, you can check out the Explore page of our website, and among other resources, find the hiking page, where we have guides and maps to all of the different properties that we're part of conserving or manage ourselves, including the Porcupine Falls Trail at the Calhoun Family Forest that Rodger spoke about as well. And then finally, wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't remind everyone that the Monadnock Conservancy is supported by donations from people like you, and we'll hope you consider, if you're not already a supporter, thank you very much. If you're not already a supporter, that you'll consider becoming one, and you can do that on our website on just about every page there. So thank you again, everyone. Oh, no, you know what? There was one more thing I wanted to say, and that is an upcoming event. And that is, oh, excuse me. Oh, no. I lost my screen. There we go. That is the fact that we have an upcoming event, specifically a book discussion of the book Saving Us by Catherine Heo, about climate change and the importance of speaking to one another about climate change as a means of coming together to take action. So again, thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful evening, and we look forward to seeing you soon. And again, hopefully in person next year for more stories about this place.